All right, welcome everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started as it is 4 o'clock. We want to be mindful of everybody's time this afternoon. Starting us out today, we have Christy and Erin from the Assessment Development and Administration Division. So if you guys want to go ahead and get started.
And thank you, Kara. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Christy Pellerin, and I'm an Education Research and Evaluation Administrator with the California Department of Education. And this is the Authentic Task for Learning and Assessment in Science webinar. Our aim today is to empower educators to understand Atlas and how it can be used instructionally. Specifically, we hope that educators understand the background of the California Science Test, our CAASPP Innovations Project, and how the Authentic Task for Learning and Assessment in Science, our Atlas Bank, fits in a system of assessments to support CAASPP. How to navigate Atlas and the platform features to enhance teaching and learning, and the structure of Atlas tasks with emphasis on implementation in the classroom. The webinar today is being recorded and will be available on the CAASPP ELPAC upcoming and on-demand training webpage. We also developed a resource guide for the webinar today that contains links to the information and resources we are discussing. One of my colleagues will place the resource guide in the chat now. Thank you, Amy. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. A panelist will answer your question either by responding directly in the Q&A are live at the end of the webinar. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge our partners in the Atlas Initiative. The Atlas Bank was developed in partnership with the Los Angeles County Office of Education, the California NGSS Collaborative, Digital Promise, and Education First. The Atlas Bank reflects a coordinated effort to support science teaching and learning statewide, and we are very grateful for these partnerships. I would also like to acknowledge the California educators who provided and are continuing to provide essential feedback to the development team. User-centered design strategies and iterative feedback loops are essential to the development of Atlas. Focus groups provided feedback toward platform requirements, platform and task features, design user experience and content taxonomies, extended beta testing, and ongoing platform refinements. With that, I would like to hand it off to my colleague, Erin Pacho, who will share more information about the CAASPP Innovations Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. To better understand the support that Atlas can offer, it is important to know where Atlas is situated in a comprehensive assessment system and where we are in the CAASPP Innovations timeline. CAASPP became operational in the 2018-19 school year. As our collective understanding of what teachers need to implement authentic and meaningful science teaching and learning improved, support for CAASPP also improved. In January 2024, the State Board of Education received the CAASPP Innovations concept paper, which described opportunities to improve science teaching, learning, and assessment. In June 2024, Senate Bill 153 was signed into law, which authorized the development of an online repository of science tasks to be available to California educators in January 2026. This online repository would be called Atlas. In January 2025, the California Department of Education and the Los Angeles County Office of Education began its partnership to develop Atlas, and in January 2026, Atlas officially became available to the public. To understand the why behind CAASPP Innovations, we have to look closely at the assessment continuum, which includes through-year opportunities for students to demonstrate what they know and can do. Here is an image of a student running on top of a pile of books. The different colors of the books represent the different skills and content assessed throughout the year. The continuum ends with a summative assessment. Formative opportunities, including interim assessments, allow educators to make day-to-day decisions to support their students and are integral to the CAAS Innovations Initiative. Currently, CAAS is administered as a summative assessment in grades 5, 8, and once in high school. CAAS includes a combination of discrete item blocks and performance tasks across all science domains. Throughout the school year, educators can utilize different instructional supports for CAAS administration. One of these tools, the CAAS Interim Assessments, was introduced in 2023 and can be used by educators during the school year to assess student progress toward the California Next Generation Science Standards, or NGSS. CAAS is comprised of CAAS Innovations is comprised of through-year class performance tasks embedded in learning, or PTELs, through-year common PTELs, an end-of-the-year summative assessment, including discrete items and a mini PT, and opportunity to learn indicators. The Atlas Bank serves as the through-year classroom PTELs that are readily available for teachers in all grade levels. These NGSS-aligned tasks support formative assessment practices, which allow students to demonstrate what they know and can do during instruction and allow educators to make day-to-day instructional decisions. Atlas joins the other operational supports for CAAS, including tools for teachers, the CAAS interim assessments, and the CAAS practice and training tests. With the CAAS Innovations Initiative ongoing, we will continue to explore opportunities to support students' progress toward the California NGSS. With that, I would like to hand off to Deb Atwell from the Los Angeles County Office of Education to talk more about the Atlas platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. As we get started, we want to acknowledge that we know that science educators across California are deeply committed to creating classrooms where students reason, investigate, and make sense of the world. At the same time, we also know the very real challenge of finding high-quality, open-ended performance tasks that are aligned to NGSS, that are instructionally meaningful and adaptable for your students. Atlas was created in response to that need. So what is Atlas? Atlas is a free statewide digital task bank of NGSS-aligned performance tasks for grades K through 12. It was designed to make high-quality science performance tasks easier to find, easier to use, and easier to adapt to your students and your classrooms. With Atlas, educators can search performance tasks by grade level, standard, domain, or phenomenon. Tasks can be previewed before use, they can be downloaded and edited to meet the needs of specific students and specific contexts. The goal is not simply access, but access that supports real classroom use and implementation. But why performance tasks? Performance tasks matter because they center student reasoning. They increase student engagement through phenomena-based inquiry. They provide opportunities for collaboration and scientific communication. And importantly, they give teachers meaningful evidence of three-dimensional learning, not just recall. So let's look at a specific example of a performance task and the types of data performance tasks provide educators. In this 5th grade performance task called Interaction of Earth Systems, which can be found on the Atlas Task Bank, students have the opportunity to engage in a real-world context. To make sense of the task, they activate their prior knowledge and they consider how Earth systems interact in a real-world context. Then students have the opportunity to collaboratively explore how Earth systems interact in the context of Shishmaref, Alaska. They create models to explain how the interaction of the hydrosphere, geosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere is affecting human lives. And then finally, students individually apply their understanding by making a recommendation to a village council to stay or leave the island based on the information they have gathered and the models that they have created. So this task is aligned to NGSS standards. It is authentic, phenomena and problem-based, and it emphasizes communication and collaboration. Just to be clear, let's look at the performance expectation. It is aligned to performance expectation in 5th grade Earth and Space Science 2, which requires students to develop a model using an example to describe the ways that the geosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, and atmosphere interact. And so let's take a look at a few of the models students produced in the field test of this task. So I'm going to give you a few seconds here to think to yourself, what are you noticing and what are you wondering about this student artifact? So many of the things in this artifact that teachers often or educators often point out is that there's a narrative quality to this artifact. And that's pretty typical for a fifth grader, a 10-year-old who's done a lot of writing around narrative up until fifth grade. But if you also actually look at the model, you can see that the arrows are there. They are showing interaction of the Earth systems. You see that the student has identified elements in that specific context that are related to the hydrosphere, the geosphere, the atmosphere, and the biosphere. And so this student seems to have a good start, or they're building their skills towards modeling the interaction of these Earth systems. So let's look at another example. And again, as you look at this model, I just want you to think to yourself, what evidence does this model provide of this student meeting the challenge of this particular performance expectation? So again, in this specific model, the student is showing the interaction of the Earth systems using arrows. They are representing the context of the performance task in Shishmaref, Alaska, and they are addressing all of the different Earth systems that are interacting with each other. There is no narrative present in this model, but the student is really focusing on kind of a symbolic representation of what's happening in Shishmaref, Alaska with global warming and temperature rise. So let's look at one more. So I want you to ask yourself, how has this student used the arrows in this particular model? Are the arrows showing interaction of the Earth systems? Educators that interact with this model often point out that the arrows really are being used to kind of label the different phases of the interaction. And while the atmosphere is represented, it's connected to the global warming piece, the hydrosphere is connecting to the sea level rise, the geosphere is connected to the erosion of the island itself, since it is unprotected from sea ice. And then, the effects to the biosphere with the houses and the homes being falling into the sea. So while all elements of the interaction of the Earth systems are present, the student is using the arrows in a way that isn't representing the interaction of those systems. And so this is great knowledge for a classroom teacher to have this information, because this is something that can be used to plan the next interaction with or building a model. We can emphasize the importance of that, those connections being modeled with arrows, which is key when we're building models at this grade level. So finally, I'm just going to leave you with one last piece of evidence or one artifact. And I want you to think to yourself, so how does this model communicate the interaction of our systems in Shishmaref, Alaska? When we think about why performance task, I encourage educators to consider how they are monitoring students' development and application of the science and engineering practices. Performance tasks offer opportunities to collect data as students do science. It answers for teachers what skills have been mastered, and it asks what skills are in development and what learning experiences might I provide to support further development of these practices in the classroom. And the great thing is when you do these in the classroom, it's the closest to students. We have opportunities to act on that data. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Josh Weisgrau from Digital Promise, where he's going to share with us how Atlas brings performance tasks to every teacher.
Thanks, Deb. So I'm actually going to show you the Atlas website. So you've heard a little bit about well, actually, I'm lying. I'm not going to actually show you the Atlas website. I'm going to show you pictures of the Atlas website. So I'd actually say this is probably the one webinar where someone's going to tell you, if you want to minimize the window and go to ngss-atlas.com and just listen to me talk while you click through the website, you could do that too. For the purposes of the webinar, I'm going to show you pictures of the website and talk through it, how some of the design choices were made, and how to make use of the platform. At its core, the platform is a search engine with over 1,350 of the performance tasks of the type that Deb was talking about. And what Atlas is designed to do is help teachers find the performance task that's right for them, for every classroom, for every set of students, even on the same topic. The right performance task might be a different performance task. So when you find yourself on the homepage, the first thing you land on, like any great search engine, is a search bar. And one thing I want to highlight as we kind of walk through this is how all of the sort of details of the design of this were heavily informed by teachers, science teachers in California throughout the design process. We started with focus groups with over 120 teachers to find out how they were using performance tasks or not, what difficulties they had in finding them, using them. And once we built the initial design of the website, we had a longer term test of the first version of the website with 50 teachers who actually used the site to search for tasks, tell us how it went, use the tasks in their classroom, and gave us lots of feedback that we're continuing to use to make the site even better, even now after launch. So when you are on the site, the first thing you'll see is this search bar. There's kind of three modes to search for anything. There's the search query, filtering, and then of course browsing the actual content. I think most powerful thing about Atlas is that it uses a natural language search. This is an AI powered search that actually has scraped content from all of the tasks themselves. So if you type things into the box in the language that you would use, it's gonna do a really good job of finding the task you're looking for if that task exists. You can use the language you would naturally use. It's not sort of keyword dependent on finding exactly the right word. So at the most basic level, you can type whatever you want into the box and click that arrow button to get to your search results. But also, if you want to refine a little bit, if there's a particular performance expectation you need, or even more so, you'll see the box on the screen I'm showing you says 3 to 5. That's a grade level selector. So if you're a middle school teacher, you'd probably select the 6 to 8 box, a high school teacher, the 9 to 12 box. And that'll immediately, when you get to your results, filter. So typing more things into the search box expands your search. Filtering narrows your search. Go ahead to the next slide. When you do a search, you'll get to the search results page. At this point, you can actually do more filtering. So on that first page, if you want to, you can do the grade level filter or the NGSS standard filter. But here you can filter for additional elements along the left-hand side, duration of the task, additional science domains, and you'll see in the filter selections things like student activities and task highlights that give you even more information about a task that you can use to filter down to find what you need. The task cards give you a really quick summary and the title. Some of those task highlights are at the bottom in those tags, and the tag at the top is actually the most featured student activity in the task. Some tasks actually have multiple activities, but the yellow tag sort of tells you the one that is sort of most prominent within the task. Also from the search results page, you can actually, if you're not finding what you want, you can go back in and change your search. That search query box at the top, you don't have to go back to the home page. You can just add words, delete words, change your query, and research again from the results page. But let's say you found what you're looking for, or what you think might be what you're looking for, and it's this dynamic Earth task, and you click on that box, and we go to the next slide. And what you'll see here, and if you see this on the actual website, it won't scroll for you. You'll get to scroll at your own pace. Is a lot of information to help you figure out if this is the right task. Now, this page isn't the task itself. It's still helping you kind of browse and choose and select the right task for you. You'll see the information as a longer summary at the top, more information about those student activities, connections to other curricula you might be using in your classroom, more detail on the NGSS standards, as well as more of these highlights and features of the task. In this section at the bottom, you can then access the task documents themselves. After the natural language search, or maybe even more than the natural language search, I think one of the most unique or important features of Atlas is that the vast majority of the tasks are shared as Google Docs. We know that even if you find that task that's almost perfect for your class, you might have to tweak it a little. Maybe you like the task Deb shared about Shishmareth, Alaska, but you want to, you're in San Jose and you want to make it more featured around San Jose, and you want to use the geology and the weather patterns and the data from that area, and you want to adapt the task. Well, if you go to use these task documents, you'll see the button says copy task folder to your Google Drive. That will actually automatically copy the folder of all the task documents to your drive so that you have your own copy and they are editable. Next slide. Couple other highlights here. You won't see these as much right away. As folks start to use them more, you'll see this feature pop up on task pages. We invite teachers to give feedback on the tasks after they've used them. And so there's two ways that happens. One is with this rating system that covers ease of preparation, implementation, as well as student engagement on sort of a quantitative scale. And there's also a place for sort of an open comment at the bottom where you could say, not just I liked the task or I didn't like the task, but here's what happened when I did it in my classroom. And here's something that might be useful to you, next teacher who uses it. So we're trying to create sort of a peer network here and peer support structure within the platform. Next slide. Along those lines, if you want to work together on a task or teach the same task with other teachers in your grade group, your school, maybe you're a TOSA or you work at a county office and you have a group of teachers you support, there's a group functionality within the Atlas platform that actually allows you to create groups, share tasks, and have essentially a comment thread with other teachers on the platform directly within the Atlas website. There's also functionality where you can create collections of tasks and to keep them together or share them so you can come back to them quickly. Next slide. Lastly, we have resource pages that are there to help you both use the Atlas platform and help you use performance tasks. So some describe, if I didn't go into full depth, there's a lot more depth about what all the little things in that are shown in the task details page are in this reading a task page resource page. And then we also have a resource page that talks about, hey, why might you want to customize a task since we're giving you this editable Google Doc? What sort of things might you want to do if you make changes? Another resource page we're showing here, and this is just a sample, talk about the different developers. The tasks come from over 30 different sources, from universities, state departments of education, et cetera. And so you can find out a little bit more about who created the tasks, and every task is credited with their developer, so you can know who they are. You may want to find one you really like and use that as a filter in the future to go back and find more tasks from that creator. And with that, hopefully you find the site intuitive and you can explore more on your own. If you run into any trouble, there's a little help button at the bottom. And with that, I'll hand it over to Anisha Bajnarian.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. It's so exciting to talk to y'all about Atlas today. I am going to share with you a little bit more about some examples of the diversity of tasks that you can find in Atlas. Deb gave you a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the types of tasks you can find here. But one of the things that we're excited to be able to share via Atlas is that Atlas is a relatively comprehensive library of the sort of existing performance tasks that have been designed for the NGSS that are currently available. In the platform right now, you can find over 1,350 performance tasks, close to 1,400 at this point, with new tasks that will be added periodically through the first half of 2026 that we know about, and then sort of at particular points in time in an ongoing fashion after that. The tasks in Atlas span all grade levels, K through 12. They include tasks that are from life, physical, earth and space sciences, and engineering. We have tasks that represent all 8 science and engineering practices and all 7 cross-cutting concepts at each of the grade bands. And something that we're really excited about is the diversity of format and approach that you can find within the Atlas tasks. Something that happens frequently on task banks and on other libraries is that the tasks are sort of all standardized. They're all in the same format. And when we talk to educators about, is that something that we want to see and like is that something that would be beneficial? Something that we heard time and time again is just how important it is to have a diversity of resources that can support the very wide range of implementation contexts, of instructional materials, of teachers' own ongoing materials and practices that they're already using in their classroom. And so Atlas tries to honor that diversity in California classrooms by reflecting it in the performance tasks that you'll find in the bank. And while, you can find different tasks sort of spanning all kinds of different things, some things that you'll be able to find are a really wide range of timing of tasks. So you can find performance tasks here that take all of 15 minutes to do in the classroom, all the way through those big, iterative, collaborative tasks that take months to really sort of engage in an authentic research project and sort of carry students through a full, comprehensive process around an investigation or something similar. See a really wide range of student activities. Again, everything from sort of on-demand paper and pencil, individual activities like a CER to construct an explanation, all the way to really embedded, community engaging processes where students are out in the world doing science in ways that are authentic to a really wide range of components of the discipline. And you'll see a wide range of tasks that sort of attend to different durable skills. We know that in California, there is a growing movement towards portraits of a graduate and sort of making sure that all of the disciplinary learning that students do are tied to broader sets of competencies that we want students to develop. And you'll see those competencies reflected in many of the Atlas tasks across a range from K through 12. Next slide, please. And so I want to give you just a couple of examples of the kinds of tasks you might see in the bank. Deb already showed you one example from elementary of a task that you can find in the library. And one thing that I will just say, I'm going to talk about this middle school task in a second, but one thing that I'll say is that we know that elementary tasks have been and tasks and resources have been challenging for many educators to find. And we're excited to have a wide range of resources there and a growing range of resources. We expect to be adding more to the elementary tasks that are made available. But I want to give you a little taste of middle school and high school too, so that before you leave this webinar, you get a sense of supports sort of across the K-12 grade spans. So in this task, students are using sound waves or exploring how sound waves can be used to clean up local water sources. Throughout the course of the task, students explore this authentic phenomenon and technology. This is something that really exists. And they go through a series of both collaborative and individual activities. They collaboratively investigate different kinds of sound waves to evaluate the company's claims about this particular technology. They individually model components of how waves work and how that might contribute to the actions that the company is claiming the technology can produce. And then through that sort of iterative, collaborative, and individual activity, they then independently use their understanding of wave propagation to address real community concerns grounded in a community of their choice. And so there's some like meaningful choice built in that is intended to support better student engagement and more relevance for a wide range of learners. In this task, students are grappling with real questions that sort of engage them in being critical consumers of information and really using their science understanding as a support for that. So they answer questions like, do the company's claims about disrupting algal blooms make sense? Is this safe for other animals and plants living in the area? Why is it disrupting the algae and not anything else? And will this technology cause sound pollution for the residents that are living there? And what is this going to mean for their quality of life? And it gives students a real opportunity to engage with the science in meaningful sense making and address real concerns that might arise from growing technology uses. Next slide, please. In high school, one thing that we hear quite a bit is that um, a concern that high school tasks tend to be these extraordinarily big, beautiful, long tasks. And if you are not already prepared to be teaching them in your classroom, like how on earth are you going to fit them into your instruction? And so, one thing we're excited to highlight is some tasks for high school that have been specifically developed to pinpoint those authentic, meaningful sense making opportunities in a very short amount of time. So this isn't one example of a task that is designed to be administered in just 20 minutes in the classroom. And it's a debate around AI data center energy use. This has emerged increasingly from youth and young people as a concern that they have, not only because of the growth of AI data centers in their in a wide range of communities, but because of concerns for the environment as well. And in this task, students are engaging with this question of at what size and scale does the energy used by AI data centers become harmful? The task includes two versions. There's a short version and a long version. In the short version, students evaluate provided evidence cards to decide which of two perspectives they would support in this argument. And they make their thinking visible by designing and producing lightning debates, a speed podcast, or a TikTok style explainer. So the actual product is very short, but it also gives them a chance to actually practice communication tools that are aligned to other competency frameworks and to things that students have noted that they are interested in developing. There's also a longer version for classrooms that do want to extend to sort of build on this a little bit more, where students do original research and engage in a facilitated debate using the same concepts, but are able to engage in more of the process. In both of these versions, students really are able to grapple with really meaningful, meaty sense making. There's no right answer necessarily. So we're really focused on their reasoning and their use of science ideas and practices to support that and something that really matters to young people and to their communities. Next slide, please. And so we are excited to have to share with you sort of Atlas and in its early stages. Josh, Deb, and Christy all mentioned that educators have been a really important part of Atlas's development from the beginning. And at the sort of tail end of its development before it launched, we were lucky enough to be able to beta test the sort of pre-launch platform with a set of teachers. And we wanted to just share with you some of the feedback that we've received so far that we're finding inspiring and hoping that it sort of catalyzes all kind of learning about how we might use Atlas. Um, I will let you read these quotes as I'm talking, but some things I want to note are that teachers have reported that they can see Atlas being used to advance their practice and to sort of center more meaningful and rigorous sense making in their classrooms, to really reduce the burden of trying to figure out how to find and how to implement these tasks. There's still a lot of work to be done by teachers. There's no denying that, but this sort of like helps make it easier to do. And something that I have found really heartening is that teachers have told us that they found these tasks, or they have found tasks in Atlas that can be useful for a wide range of learners in their classrooms. And these are not specific to high performers or students who are still developing their understanding, but can be used to sort of support sense making for the full range of young people in their classrooms. So we're just really excited to share this with you and to continue learning about how we might use Atlas, but performance tasks to advance teaching and learning in science. So next slide, please. And so I'm really excited to invite Deb to come back online and to invite our colleague, Nicole Silva from the Santa Cruz County Office of Education to share some experiences with us. We're gonna have a little fireside chat. So everybody grab your s'mores and your chocolate and your warm beverages for this kind of quick fireside chat while we talk a little bit about some experiences with performance tasks and Atlas and see what we're learning from the field. So, Nicole, welcome. We're so excited that you're here. And Deb, thanks so much for joining this conversation.
Thank
Um,
you.
I wanted to start by asking, so Nicole, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Um, I know when we first sort of met and talked, you shared that you've had some experiences using Atlas in your own work and in work with educators. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how using Atlas and performance tasks can change experiences for both leaders and teachers.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm the science coordinator in Santa Cruz County and new at my job. So I've spent a lot of time the beginning months visiting schools and visiting different sites. And what I have found is there is a lot of elementary school teachers that are struggling to find how and when to teach science. They're excited to teach science, but they're overwhelmed with how to teach it with the amount of just even supplies or materials. Um, so I worked very closely with a site, an elementary school site that had a lot of that had a pull-out science teacher for the last 15 years. And so they had not actually been trained in NGSS or even had any supplies. So they were overwhelmed with where to start. And so I worked with them and we presented Atlas. So I brought it in to a meeting that I had with them, and we just kind of explored it. And then they picked a couple of resources, specifically the taking I want to take my teacher on a vacation and then to conserve water. And the kids loved it, the students loved it, and the teachers loved it. They were so excited to have something that they felt was relevant, that the kids really actually got into, and that it was all in one place. And that for the fifth grade teacher who was really concerned about the cast, this was a perfect, she just felt so much relief that she felt like she really had something that was supporting her teacher, I mean, her teaching to get the kids ready for cast. And obviously that's not the end goal, but she was really excited to have that curriculum support. She said the students were collaborating, that they were looking back at their data, that it was really developing their reasoning skills. Kids they had found did have some claim evidence, but their reasoning was a little bit lacking, and they were going back and forth and debating with each other. And so, yeah, they were just really excited about it, and we're more excited to look at different resources to implement it. And then they want me to come back and give it to the whole, all the different schools in the district for elementary school. So it was a great experience for them.
That is amazing. That is so, so wonderful to hear. Um, I'm wondering sort of like from your experience as a leader, what is it like for you to be able to see resources like this that can be transformative for educators that you're working with?
For me, it just feels really good that, there's so much out there and we can overwhelm teachers with there's this and there's this and there's this. But for them to actually really take something I had just presented, and then for the next 3 times we met to go through them, and I could physically feel the relief they felt in teaching science. They really hadn't been teaching science and didn't know where to start. And that's why they were so excited for me to come back and say, please come and show all the other teachers because they're in the same boat. I had just been specifically working with the 3 of them. So that always feels good because there's just too much on their plate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we heard a lot during the development of Atlas was just that, one of the major problems to solve in service of better science teaching and learning for all learners is being able to make this make this something that makes teachers' lives easier.
Yes.
And so it's so wonderful to hear your experiences there.
Yeah.
Um,
And making
yeah,
it easier, but it's really relevant, right? It's really the data and the reasoning, and they thought that it was, one of the teachers said that it helped them analyze the data and supported their claims with evidence while exploring high interest topics that kept them engaged for the whole time. She loved all the conversations they were having with each other, especially the the third graders about where they're debating where they were going to take their teacher on vacation.
That's amazing. And it is reminding me of some things that Deb mentioned at the top of this webinar about why performance assessments. And it really is like it's the opportunity for students to be like engaged in that deep reasoning and for teachers to be able to see all of the brilliance of their young people in their classrooms and where they can sort of identify opportunities to sort of grow that brilliance more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so it's just so wonderful to hear that. Um, Deb, this is also so this is making me think about some things that you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation on your work on with performance assessments in Laco. And I know that you've been doing performance assessment work there in many subjects, but including science for a long time. And so I'm wondering, like, listening to Nicole, like, what's resonating from you from what she has shared? And based on your experiences, like, what are some major lessons learned for all of us who will be hopefully using Atlas to support teaching and learning moving forward? What do you want us to know about how we should think about using performance tasks to advance teaching and learning, and how can Atlas help with that?
Okay, lots of things to say here, Anisha. I want to connect to what Nicole was saying because in the many years that we've been working on performance tasks used instructionally in the classroom at LACO, the thing I hear the most when I work with teachers in professional learning communities, selecting a task, preparing, we go in depth when we work in a PLC. We select a task as a team. We think about how students will respond to this task. We try to anticipate all the ways that the task can be solved, or like in the modeling in the case of Shishmaref, how students might model this. And so we're prepared for those conversations in case students get stuck, right? And then when we move into the facilitation of the task, and then our reflection after that, the number one thing I hear over and over and over again from teachers is, wow, I didn't think my students could do that. I had never realized that they had that capacity. Or specific students that are often marginalized, that don't speak a lot, how they come alive in tasks like this, how they engage with the content differently than with a direct instruction model. And they find their voice. And I think that's so important because when we center student reasoning in the classroom in science or mathematics or writing, this is an opportunity for students to find their voice and to create agency in students. They see themselves as scientists and mathematicians that can solve and engage with real world problems. And so I think that's one of the primary benefits of using performance tasks in the classroom instructionally. Plus, I think for teachers, um, these tasks, this data that is collected around the artifacts that students produce in these performance tasks is actionable. We often hear from teachers like, oh, summative assessment is so detached. They aren't my students anymore, right? That how do I act on that data? Well, performance tests in the classroom give teachers a wonderful opportunity to collect some data that includes information about skill development around the SCP or the practices specifically. It helps us surface that knowledge, what students can do and what they know. And then that's quite actionable. When you see their models or when you see their explanations, then you can take that data and create another classroom activity or lesson that directly addresses some of the maybe perhaps misconceptions that they might have, or provide them other opportunities to practice and hone their own skills. And one way in particular that I just want to mention that I think is super important is I've seen teachers take some of these models or these student work samples that are attached to some of the tasks and use them for conversations in their classroom to open science. Just project it and say, talk to your partner. What advice would you give this student to elevate this model and so those are all wonderful opportunities that all come out of the tasks that are in this task bank.
I love this. And okay, this is a question for both of you. And this is coming from some questions we're getting from in the Q&A from our participants in this webinar. So you've both spoken so far to the use of using performance tasks in Atlas or pre-Atlas, other places that you found performance tasks, Using performance tasks to sort of to help catalyze teachers' journeys who have not used performance tasks before, who have maybe not had as much experience or access to resources for science, and using these sort of like these experiences as almost a like a microcosm of three-dimensional teaching and learning in the form of a task. And that feels manageable, it feels doable. Teachers can feel successful in doing that as sort of like an entry point. And we see this amazing thinking from students. I'm floored every single time. Like we put something interesting in front of kids, and just to see the like full range of their thinking is amazing. So you've both sort of mentioned that, and if I think about this as a spectrum, it feels like where that's one way to use performance tasks at the sort of like earlier stages of making the shift towards performance-based teaching and learning, three-dimensional teaching and learning that we want to see in science. We have in California many teachers who are sort of like making progress along that journey, sort of trying to implement high quality instructional materials that may have more phenomena-based instruction built into it already, who may have already done now the amazing work that you're both supporting in your local context and are ready for the next step. How do you see performance tasks, and then Atlas as a resource of performance tasks, but how do you see performance tasks as something that can help teachers who are at a different stage along that sort of progression toward rich, robust, multidimensional teaching and learning? They're not quite at that earliest stage of first sort of being exposed to performance-based tasks, but are farther along in the process. How do you see performance tasks as helping them? And I said this is for both of you, so I'm just going to say free for all. Whoever wants to take it first, go for it.
Do you want to go, Deborah? You can go.
Okay. But Nicole, you've had the most recent experience, so I almost wonder if you maybe should begin. I don't want to let me allow you to go first, and then I can fill in.
Sure. I mean, so for me, the student or the teachers that I was working with were at the beginning stages. But for me, I think just because you're the database or whatever it's been called is so big and rich, there's something for everybody. I haven't had tons of time yet to explore all the different things, but you have from the 20 minutes to the weeks long project. So it really allows different entry points for teachers depending on where they're at in their comfort level and what it is that they're looking for, whether they're looking for a 20-minute. I want to really just kind of get into this topic for just this amount of time because we have this, or I'm really going to develop this big long project that has some action items at the end that's integrated even into their math or science or their local community. So I think there's so many entry points to me, whether you're a very experienced science teacher or you're just scrambling looking for something. Same with your students, whether you're a struggling student or you're a high level student, there's something for everyone there.
Oh, Nicole, that is so interesting. And that makes me think like one thing you could potentially do actually as a teacher or a leader, depending on like what you're looking to do, is to actually think about what you want that progression to look like, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're facilitating, okay, now I'm putting on my like professional learning facilitator hat for a second. But if you're going to facilitate like an ongoing PLC, you can imagine like what does that progression look like? And how do we find tasks that help our classrooms move along that progression? So maybe an early task is a more scaffolded sort of approach that allows teachers and students to get a deeper understanding about how to do performance-based teaching and learning. But maybe the next task, we start to look for one that has less scaffolding, has more
Mhm.
student agency built into it, that has like teachers playing a slightly different role in facilitating that learning. And we can actually like use things like the highlights and the collections and those types of things in the bank to help us organize those types of progressions in how we want to engage. So Nicole, as you were talking, that was just something that like came up for me. Deb, please add and build to that on that.
No, and I just want to add on that I see that in work with teachers. Like at first, we're all apprehensive about something new, right? We have our routines in the classroom that work for us. Um, and so often we'll see teachers want to start with a shorter task, 20 to 30 minutes. But you see teachers progress as well, like feeling more confident once you see how students respond, how their engagement levels increase, how just asking a few questions can spur student thinking and collaboration. And then how from that collaboration they can come up with really amazing explanations, or they can interpret graphs differently. And so once they've had some success, then I think we start looking more and more at, oh, what could we do in a 50-minute block? Or what could we do in an hour block? Because I think so much of what we do, finding time for science in an elementary classroom or even in a middle school classroom, is very predicated on the time that we have in the classroom. And so I've seen teachers think of really creative ways on how to tackle a 60-minute task, breaking it into 3 phases, doing one on Wednesday, like a Notice Wonder, the engagement phase, and then coming back on Thursday and doing the explore phase, and then, coming back on Friday and doing the explain phase of the task. So I think we see teachers pedagogy evolve as well. And so the learning is not just with students, but it's also with us as we build our own confidence in using these tasks in the classroom.
I'll just add something real quick to that, if I may.
Please.
For the teachers I was working with, it really allowed them to feel much more confident in letting the students lead the discussion, the student inquiry. It was, they'd heard about it just that driving the learning was a big shift that they noticed, and they really felt so much more confident in doing more of that by just the way that the Atlas was, laid out for them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, one thing we've talked about a lot in Atlas's development is that at the end of the day, it's a resource bank. Like, it is making resources available. It's sort of it's trying to make both the tasks available and important information about the tasks available, but ultimately it's about empowering teachers to like be able to do amazing things in their classroom and to make it slightly easier to do that. And so I just appreciate both of you sort of like speaking to that. I want to push on just this sort of like this idea of the spectrum and different ways that teachers and leaders support for pedagogy is evolving. So we have, the one challenge we hear a lot about implementing performance tasks, especially tasks that you're going to find and pull down, for example, from something like Atlas, is that if you have an ongoing curriculum sequence, so for example, let's say that you are implementing OpenSciEd or Amplify or something like that, sometimes like I think it can be challenging sometimes to think about like how do you make use of resources like this in the context of a coherent set of instructional materials that you are trying to implement. And so I wonder if either of you have a thought about this. So there's like all of the things that we want to do to support and improve our instruction. How do you do that in ways that like enhance your coherence and your implementation of your instructional materials rather than detract or make it confusing or chaotic in your classroom? What do you both think about that?
Or go
Nicole, I
ahead,
saw
Becky.
you come off mute, so please
Yes,
go for
I
it.
have a quick, I mean, for me, when I was in the classroom, which was just recently, there's many times where you're in a spot in your curriculum where you just don't feel like it does a very good job, or it's not relevant to the students, or it's not local to their experience. So I think Atlas could be a perfect place for if you have a unit that you're working through with Amplify or OpenSciEd that you want to support and to build in a performance task. I think that to me, that's what I think would be an excellent resource.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Stephanie,
I would add on that in my work, often with teachers and in my own classroom when I was in the classroom, I often saw um, engagement with these types of tasks as a culminating experience. Like I have to teach them the skills or the information, the content before they can engage in this open-ended task. Um, and now that has completely been thrown out because I actually feel that, or my experience has led me to believe that opening units of instruction with a phenomena-based performance task is actually the way to go. It engages students differently. It gets them excited about what they're about to learn in the following weeks. And then, so I challenge teachers to think about, because we often wonder, like, where do I place this in my unit of instruction, right? Where do I place this? And so I think opening units with performance tasks is wonderful. And then once you've collected some data along the way, then you're like, wow, they're still really struggling with this idea, with this concept. And so let me see what kind of tasks, short tasks in Atlas I might be able to use so that I can actually give them more opportunity to develop those particular skills. And so I see Atlas as a great resource for that. When I want something quick to kind of take the temperature of where my students are, to give them another experience, I could easily plug in what I'm trying to do or what I'm, say in the case of modeling, for example, I can plug that in, short 30-minute tasks around modeling. And then I could see if I did use Shishmaref and I see, okay, maybe half my students are starting to develop skills towards modeling, but we need more interaction. We need more opportunities to develop those skills. I could go in, find some more opportunities. I could do a little direct instruction if I wanted to. And then I could come back a third time and say, okay, now let me see, let's find another modeling task. Or I could take something like Shishmaref and use it in an LA context. I'm in Los Angeles County. It's a different, the interaction of our systems is a little different here. I mean, we have lots of evaporation with rising temperatures, higher increases in fire. And so I could take that same task, change the context, and see how the student, the same questions and everything, but change the context and see how the student's modeling has evolved over my, 6 weeks of instruction. So I don't know if that's too much information, Anisha, but I really do see that Atlas can be this type of resource that we go to depending on where we are to find out more information about our students and get ideas outside of the textbook that might be helpful for use in the classroom.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, something that we know happens all the time is sort of the principled adaptation of materials for implementation in your classroom, in your context. And one thing that I'm hearing from both of you is that the having access to a wide range of resources with some information about things like instructional model and like important elements that are embedded in the task, and those can just be reflection tools for how might you, if you're looking for something to supplement or support your implementation in your context, you can use those resources to help you do that. And I love that. So I'm cognizant of time, and we have one other question that I think I would love for us to I would love for you to hear both of your responses. And then I'm maybe going to try to squeeze in a closing question, but we might not get there. Um, we've one of our participants has asked that, like, for you pull down some of these tasks, they're rich and robust, and you're asking a lot of students to do a lot of sense making. In contexts where teachers are not used to teaching this way, or students are not used to learning this way, that can be a frustrating, sometimes like even scary experience. And so wondering, like, from both of your expertise at leading and coaching others in doing this work, what do you recommend for how we manage those sort of like early frustrations in making the shift towards more performance-based teaching and learning?
I I can field this one. I think that, well, this is again, I think students are actually, I'm amazed at how quickly students can interact and engage in this type of work without much direction. I think there are good instructional routines like notice wonders, engagement activities that can be used so that students understand those routines. And so those are things that can be coached or that teachers can support each other with. But I don't find that, I think once students understand or what they're being asked to do, the transfer, the interaction or the engagement with the task and centering their reasoning, that's something they naturally gravitate to. That's very natural. I think for teachers, again, it's building confidence because we often think about how do we manage the classroom. And this is a lively classroom. Doing this collaborative work, it could be lively. Lots of students have opinions. Nicole shared that earlier, and them wanting to share their evidence. Well, where's your proof that that's the best vacation for our teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so I think building confidence on how to manage this level of engagement, and to encourage it. Maybe manage is not the right word, but to encourage this type of exploration. And there's an arc to this, right? There'll be times when they're working collaboratively, but then that comes to a quiet time when they're explaining individually, perhaps, or they're sharing in small groups. So, and I think the more we do it, the more comfortable we become. And actually, what a relief it is not to be trying to keep kids on task for a full hour. So.
Nicole,
Real quick, I'll
anything
just
to add,
add
please?
the teachers that I was working with, that it was brand new for them, brand new for their students. And the way it was set up and scaffolded, the students felt supported. They weren't frustrated. It was the first time that they had done this, the students and the teachers, and they actually were fully engaged, and the teachers with all the resources that were there, the student samples, the answer keys, the resources that were there, they actually felt like it was an easy thing to implement, even since they hadn't even been using any science curriculum prior to this. That
So
was
I'm
their
hearing,
experience.
I love that. So I'm hearing build confidence, ensure scaffolds, and change the incentives a little bit. Like what's valued? What's valued is the thinking and the process, not
Yeah.
a perfect response, a perfect investigation, a perfect sort of classroom. And if we can do those things, we might be able to help manage and sort of support that moving forward.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you both so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom with us today. We're so, so excited to have your thinking on this webinar. I want to thank everybody who has joined us today to learn a little bit about Atlas and encourage you to explore. Find a task, try it out, tell us what you think. And there are lots of people throughout the state who are here to support you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Kara or Christy, I'm going to hand it back to you if there's any closing from CDE.
Sounds great. No, thank you guys all for attending. This was recorded and it will be posted in the next couple of weeks, so you can share with any of your colleagues who weren't able to make it. And thank you to all of the panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great evening.